Pop quiz. In what year were the Chicago Bulls winning NBA championships? Cuba Gooding Jr. was yelling at you to show him the money, and kids everywhere were freaking out because when you tickled their Elmo, it would have a full-on panic attack. If you said 1997, you would be correct. 1997 also happened to be the year I graduated from high school, and it was in the spring of 1997, my senior year, when I had to make one of the most difficult decisions of my life. What spring break trip was I gonna go on in my senior year? And I had two pretty good options. Option one, Mexico. A handful of my friends, a few chaperones were going down, and they had room for one more person, and I got invited. Option two, the south side of Chicago. We had an educator who was leading a mission trip, and they were taking about 8 to 10 of us to go down and lead this program in Chicago. Now, made a lot of really bad decisions when I was in high school. Mexico, Chicago, I got this one right. I chose Mexico. I'm just kidding, I chose Chicago. And I will tell you this, it was exactly what our sort of educator promised, right? It was this intense sort of immersion trip where we worked in some of the most impoverished neighborhoods I have ever been in soup kitchens and after school programs and youth shelters. And I remember it was on the final night of this sort of experience that our chaperones took us down to the heart of Chicago. We got onto the subway, the L, and for us Minnesota boys, this was the first time we had ever experienced anything like that. And we were being loud and kind of, pushing each other as we're trying to hold on to the metallic poles and whatnot. And we get down to the downtown area of Chicago, and we find this pizza shop. And for, about 2 hours, we sat outside. We ate pizza and we connected. We talked about the highlights of the week, the lowlights, the connections we made. And I remember even as a 18-year-old senior thinking to myself, something's happening right now. There was something unique, something special. I couldn't quite put my finger on exactly what it was, but that energy we had continued as we made our way back onto the subway into like the other part of the city where our shelter was located. Now, it's a little bit later into the evening, so the cars are a little less full, and yet our friends and I are not being any less rambunctious, right? We're still pushing and shoving and being pretty loud when all of a sudden, the brakes squeal, the train stops, and the doors open. Onto the car walks this woman. Homeless? Maybe. Hopeless? Absolutely. She had this cart, which she had what looked like all of her stuff in it, and all of us instantly looked down. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw this woman slowly go have a seat in between 3 unoccupied seats, and that train car, which was full of life and energy merely seconds before, was quiet and lifeless, which is why we heard what we heard next. This woman, quietly but audibly, began to cry. "Look down, Joe," a voice in my head screamed as if it knew I could only take so much. "Look down, Joe. This isn't your problem. Look down, Joe. You have no solutions. Look down, look down, look down." But I didn't. I looked up. I stood up. And I began walking towards this woman. I had no plan. I just sat down next to her, and she looked at me. And in that 2-second glance, what I saw was 20 years of shame and hurt and fear and embarrassment all in one glance. And I instinctively, without even thinking about it, just sort of put my arm around this woman and squeezed her shoulder as if to say, "I see you. I feel you." And this woman who I had never even spoken a single syllable to slowly leans her head into my chest and begins to weep like deep, heavy, heaving cries. And I just held her there for what was about 5 minutes until the brakes squealed, the train stops, the doors open. It was her stop. She stands up and sort of gathers all her belongings and walks out the door, and the door's shut, and I've never seen her again. And yet, I've never stopped thinking about that experience, about that moment. And I wonder, Joe, in 2020, in our current sort of day and age, would you have the same sort of courage that you had way back when you were a senior in 1997? But then I think maybe that's not the right question. Maybe the right question isn't, would I have done something back or today? But maybe the right question is, would I have actually seen this woman today? Or would I be doing what I'm doing 99% of the time I have any free moment of downtime, right? Looking down at a screen, checking an app, seeing who commented on a social media post. Here's the truth. Whether it's at home with our family, whether it's at restaurants with friends or on the street with strangers, we have stopped seeing each other. And what we know is that that is having an impact. If there was anything that I learned as an 18-year-old senior back from that story is this: human connection matters. Human connection matters. It is the foundation of the life that we live in this world. Human connection matters. It is oxygen for our souls. Human connection matters, and yet every day it can seem like it's slipping through our hands. High fives, handshakes, hugs are losing even pre-COVID to Snapchat, social media, and screen time. And like I said, it's having a profound impact. Anxiety, depression, self-harm, suicide, all of them up. Human connection down. Coincidence? I think not. We are living in what I call culture look down, and quite honestly, I'm on a mission to reverse that trend. My name is Joe, and I'm the founder of Happy Caveman and Till 360. We speak in school communities all over the United States and share messages of human connection with students in high schools and middle schools and elementary schools. We speak to teachers, we speak to parents, we'll speak to anybody who will listen to us. And at the core of all of our experiences is human connection. And that's not just because it's a feel-good sort of thing or a Joe sort of an idea. No, this is backed by science. In fact, one of the longest sort of research projects ever done in our country, currently going on by some very smart people at Harvard, have studied people throughout their life. And at the end of their life, they've been asked a series of questions, and the researchers are trying to glean what makes people the most fulfilled, the most content, the happiest. And what they found, without a shadow of a doubt, that the happiest, most content, most fulfilled humans at the end of their life, it had very little to do with savings, very little to do with status, and very little to do with stuff. And it had everything to do with quality relationships. One's health and one's happiness is directly determined by the amount of quality relationships they have. Think about that. What is the single greatest determining factor to a quality relationship? I believe it's human connection. How do we reverse the trend on mental health, create stronger, more resilient kids, and increase our own happiness and fulfillment? Connection is the cure. And so today, a conversation around how we can do just that. How we as parents can increase connection in our homes, in our communities, and most importantly, with our kids. We're going to break this down today in 3 big strategies. Strategy number 1 is all about what I call just look up. Strategy number 2 is called share thy story. And strategy number 3 is what I call chains and links. So 3 big strategies. Now, 2 big disclaimers. Disclaimer number 1. If you are looking for the speaker who has the PhD or the parenting expert with the pie charts and the graphs, you are in the wrong place. That's not my style. That's not sort of how I roll. But I will say, over the last 18 years, I've been on the front lines with students speaking in schools all over the country, hundreds of thousands of students and educators from all different ages. And I have 3 kids myself. So this is stuff that I'm wrestling with and ideas that sort of I'm using in my own life. So I'm pretty confident that the ideas that I share will resonate with you. And the second disclaimer is that there's no way I believe that I have a monopoly on these ideas. These are some ideas that are working in my life and some strategies that I found to work in other people's lives, but there's no manual to this parenting thing, right? Your kids are different than my kids, and our family situations are all a little different. So there might be some tweaking that you might have to do to some of these strategies in order to make them work for you, but that's okay. Now, 3 big strategies, 2 big sort of disclaimers, and 1 little fun fact. And the fun fact is this. I have found and discovered the single best phrase to get your kids to smile and engage a little bit. And that phrase is not, hey you, or go get the potato chips, or whatever. It is this 4-word phrase. I love your face. Say it with me. I love your face. Say it a little faster and a little louder. I love your face. Now look at your child. Look at them in the eyes and say, I love your face. Perfect. It is the exact amount of awkward you are looking for. I use it and employ it in all situations that I am in when I'm working with kids. And in fact, it resonates so strongly that there was a 6th grade student from Chilton, Wisconsin, who wrote a song based on I love your face. Actually, I kind of transposed it. I have it on guitar. I'm going to play it for you right now before we jump into the strategy. So take a peek. I want this to get cemented into your brains and into your hearts. So I'll check back in with you in a few minutes. I love your face tomorrow. I love your face today. I love your face any day, every day, anyway. I love your face. I love your face. If your face was in a race, it'd be in first place. I love your ears. I love your ears. Your ears, I could stare at them for years. I love your nose. I love your nose. Your nose is one of my bros. I love your chin. I love that chin. Deep within that smooth chin lives Jackie Chan. I love your mouth. I love that mouth. Your teeth, they shine so bright. You can see them way down south. I love your face tomorrow. I love your face today. I love your face any day, every day, anyway. I love your face. All right, let's jump into these 3 big strategies on how we can reclaim connection. Big strategy number 1 is what I call just look up. Now, on the very day I was born, one of the most preposterous things occurred to me in my entire life. I remember it like it was yesterday. I kid. The date was April 10th, 1979. The location, St. Joseph's Hospital in St. Paul, Minnesota. Now, I'm told it was a pretty typical delivery and labor and all of that. And after I met my mom and the nurses poked and prodded me for a little bit, the delivery nurse was taking me out of the room, which is when she turned to my mom and said, Kathy, congratulations, you have a healthy baby boy. And that's when the most preposterous thing happened. My mom, who was a wily vet to the birthing process, I was the youngest of 3, knew exactly what to do in that moment to rest and relax. She pulled out a Tarrington 100 and lit it up and smoked it right there in the hospital room. And the nurse looked at her and asked, if you need an ashtray, just let me know. Crazy. When I tell kids that less than 40 years ago, you could smoke cigarettes in a hospital, their first response is, what? Their second response is, no way. And their third response is, why? And today, all these years later, it's easy and popular for us to wag our fingers or shake our hands and scoff at that ignorance. I mean, how could they not have known, right? How could they have been so blind? Why did it take so long to figure this out? And although it's easy for us to criticize the choices people made so many years ago, I can't help but wonder what they're going to be saying about us 40 years from now. You mean you gave an 8-year-old an iPad for 8 hours a day and you didn't think it would have any sort of negative impact? Something tells me that's going to sound about as silly as smoking a cigarette in a hospital. In 2007, Steve Jobs stood on a stage, looked into an audience, and said, "We have this new device. It does 3 things. It can make phone calls, it can play music, and it can take pictures. It's called the iPhone." And 4 years later, 2011, smartphones from every company were inundated in our neighborhoods, in our societies, from every demographic, from rural to urban, every age, from young to old, every socioeconomic status, rich or poor. There was a very, very good chance that in your pocket you had a device that connected you to the internet, your email, and your fantasy football scores all in one place. And the truth is, we haven't stopped looking down since. 84. That is the number of times on average we look down every day to check our home screens. 8.5, the number of hours on average a high school student spends looking down on a screen, and that was pre-COVID. In England, the prisoners there are let out by law 1.5 hours every single day to get fresh air and be outside. The majority of kids in that same country don't get as much time outside. If you don't think all of that screen time and that lack of connection has an impact on our health and our happiness, guess again. So how? How do we find the balance? Because the truth is, it's not about no screens. It's about finding and maintaining a healthy balance of life with your screen. One of the best ways I've heard people describe it to me is this. Is your phone a tool or is it a companion? Let's think about it. What's a tool? A tool is something you get out, you use it to solve a problem, and then when you're finished, you put it away, right? You don't walk around with a screwdriver in your pocket or go up to somebody and say, "Hey, have you seen my Crescent Wrench 11S? It's got dual wrenching." No, it just doesn't happen. You put it away, right? Companions, however, companions are different. Companions you spend a lot of time with. So companions are people that you miss when they're gone. Companions are people that you can't live without. Where does your phone fit in for you? For me, too many times, my phone is more of a companion. I miss it when it's gone. I spend a whole lot of time with it, and oftentimes I feel like I can't live without it. And to make it less of a companion and more of a tool, I think it's incredibly important that we are intentional about putting together a screen time plan as an individual, but also together as a family. I want to share with you the screen time plan that we use in our house. And again, our situation is totally different than yours, but I will say this has a mild to average amount of success on a weekly basis, which with 3 children, I'm going to call that a win. I think the first thing any good screen time plan needs to have is sort of an open conversation around why we are creating it in the first place. I tell my kids, I'm not putting this plan together because I don't love you. I'm putting this plan together because I love you so much. It would be irresponsible of me not to as a parent. I would never, ever, right when you got your license, drop you off in the middle of New York City and say, figure it out. And I'm not going to do that with this phone either. We're going to work on it together. I'm going to guide you with practice, with tools, so that you know how to use this tool to the best of your ability. The second thing I would say is to make sure your kids are involved in this plan. Their input is going to allow them to get buy-in, and buy-in is going to give you the success you are looking for. So here are 3 steps to a screen time plan. Step number 1, create what I call non-negotiables. Non-negotiables are those hard and fast rules that you cannot budge on. Maybe you have non-negotiables around the amount of time your kids can be on a screen in any given day, or the types of games that they can be on. But these are the rules that cannot be budged. My 8th grade daughter has been asking and begging for social media for her whole life, basically. And we had a rule that she couldn't get it until she was in 8th grade. And even when she has it, she has a limited amount of time on it. And it was so awesome because in 7th grade, she would call me and she would beg, and I would just say, I'm sorry, It's the non-negotiable. I can't do anything about it. And it ended that conversation pretty quickly. So create some non-negotiables. Step number 2, sacred spaces. These are places where the phones aren't even on. They're not even on silent. For us, it's the dinner table. My wife has a very hard and fast rule that no cell phones at the dinner table, not on the table, not in your pocket, off and gone. The third idea is what I call genius revealed. Now, let me break this down a little bit. One of the things that I've experienced that kids love more than anything is teaching parents something they don't know. What an awesome opportunity to give your kids, to let them teach you about some of the things they're doing on their screen. Like, what if they allowed you to dive into their world of Minecraft or Fortnite or TikTok or whatever it may be? And no, you don't have to become a master at that thing or spend hours amount of time in it. But as a parent, you can allow your kids to teach you what they're interested in, right? You can allow their genius to be revealed to you, and you can use some of that screen time to create human connection. So 3 steps to screen time success: create non-negotiables, create sacred spaces, and find some time to allow your kiddos to reveal their genius to you. So here's what I'd like you to do. If you're by yourself, I would like you to reflect, or if you're with your family, I would like you to have a discussion on this. I want you to answer 2 questions. Is your phone more of a tool, or is it more of a companion? And what could a screen time plan look like for you? Could you use just one of the suggestions that I shared, 2 or 3, or maybe even bring in your own suggestions? But take a few minutes to either reflect or have that discussion, and I'll check back in with you after. Now, there is one single question that I get every time I am leading a parent event live in person, and that is this: Joe, what is the right amount of time that I should allow my kids to be on a screen in any given day? And of course, that answer is going to vary in lots of different ways for lots of different situations, but the science has come back. Jean Twenge, the author of iGen, wrote a book, and she has dug deep into the research. And what she has found is that the amount of time that is appropriate for anyone to be on their screens in any given day before it's going to have any sort of negative impact is 2 hours. Now, truth be told, on any given day in our family, there are times where we are right around that 2-hour mark, and there are times when we are woefully over that mark. But the answer isn't to beat yourself up or to sort of live in this world where we yearn for yesterday and we say kids these days with their darn screens and their no human connection. Because here's the truth: screens, tech, it's not going away anytime soon, and in so many ways, it makes our life amazing. However, at the same time, I think it's incredibly important that we have conversations and we are intentional with how much time we are using on these screens with this tech. Because you and I both know that childhood, these moments and these years with our kids are going to go by like this. And if we're not careful, if we're looking down all day, every day, we are going to miss it. We're going to miss the big things, like the places you get to go and the people you get to meet, the family you get to have, and the friends in your life. We miss the big things that make life so fantastic, but we also miss the little things, like the authentic laughter from a toddler, or the game-winning hit from your middle schooler, or catching every green light on the way to work. That is awesome. When we look down all day, we're going to miss the things in life that make it so amazing. And let me just say, at the end of our lives, nobody is going to look back and say, man, I'm so glad I spent an extra 75 minutes answering those emails. And they're going to say, man, I'm so glad that I spent that extra 75 minutes connecting with my kids. So ask yourself, is this a tool or is this a companion? How can you have a healthy and maintain some balance with the tech and the screen time in your life? Big strategy number 1, just look up. Big strategy number 2 is what I call share thy story. About 5 years ago, I received an email from the nurse at my daughter's school. It said something along the lines of this: "Dear Mr. Beckman, I don't know how quite to say this, but your daughter is coming into my office almost on a daily basis, and the things that she's talking about raise some pretty serious red flags." And the nurse was absolutely right. My daughter, Sophia, we got her tested, and she was diagnosed shortly after with childhood depression. In 4th grade, she missed 30 days of school, not because she didn't want to be there. She wanted to be there. There were some days she literally couldn't even get out of bed. Over the last few years, as we've gone through this, wrestled with drugs and doctors and psychiatrists, needless to say, the last few years have been anything but easy in our house. Now, I don't share that story with you to increase your sympathy for me. I share that story to increase my humanness to you. I believe stories are the single greatest way we as humans can connect with each other. In fact, it's been scientifically proven that our brains are in daydream mode nearly 75% of the day. We're thinking about different things, what's going on in our lives. Like if some of you have checked out already from this talk, totally normal. But where I knew I had 100% of you is when I started telling you the story about my daughter or the woman on the subway, because something happens when once upon a time gets said, or that reminds me of this. Our brains lock in. We are engaged and open and ready for that message. Listen, if you really want them to remember it, use story. Like if you think it's important to talk to your kids about drinking, or important to talk about the digital footprint or the choices that you want them to make in the next few years, man, use story to drive that home. Short stories, long stories, fake stories, real stories, stories with happy endings, stories with non-happy endings. And if you really want to move the needle, you'll share your story. Now, I meet a lot of parents who say, "Joe, that doesn't make sense because I don't have any good stories to share. There's nothing that's ever happened in my life, or I'm not a good storyteller." And I say, you know what? Bogus to all of that. Any story is better than no story, and you do have stories in your life, and I will prove it. There's an acronym that I use when I'm really looking for stories that I share when I'm working with students, and that acronym is called FORD. Every letter stands for a category where I believe hundreds of stories from your life live within. Let's break that down. F stands for family. I can't imagine you don't have lots of stories from your childhood, or from the family that you have right now, or maybe the surrogate family that you had in between, or whatever it may be. The second is O, occupation. We've all had first jobs, second jobs, good jobs, bad jobs, first days, tough days. There are stories built into the work that we have done. R stands for recreation. I think about my physics teacher, Mr. Westlake. He would always talk about how he would ride his motorcycle on the weekends, and every time he did, you could see the passion in his voice come out. What are the things you love to do outside of the normal day-to-day? I'm sure there are stories built from experiences there. And then D, dreams. We've all had them. Places we've wanted to go, people we've wanted to meet, experiences we've wanted to experience. And what were your dreams as a kid? What are they now? Have they changed? Use those to create stories and connect with your kids. And if you need a final category after all of that, I have one more. We'll put an S at the end of Fords. An S stands for school. Again, my guess is there are hundreds of stories from your elementary, your middle school years. Yeah, put yourself there for a little bit. Yeah, now pull yourself out, get into the high school years, maybe even some stories from college. Maybe not some stories from college, right? But there are lots of stories that you can share that will engage with your kiddos. And again, stories really move the needle. And if you were to ask me, 18 years ago, Joe, what are the best stories that you could share that are going to really move the needle for kids? I would have said, I got it. I know. It's the stories where I knocked it out of the park, right? Where I did the right thing. When everyone on the weekend did the wrong thing, I made the right choice. Those are the stories that are really going to move the needle. And the truth is, those are good and those are nice. But honestly, the stories that really impact hearts, that get remembered, that create connection, aren't the stories where you knocked it out of the park. It's the time you struck out in the bottom of the ninth. It's not when life was perfect. It's when life sometimes got a little messy. It's these stories that make us real. It's these stories that make us human. And when it comes to connection, authenticity and humanness are two pretty important pieces to the whole equation. So use story, your story, the good moments, tough moments, and everything in between to create connections and humanity with your kids. That's big strategy number 2. So big strategy number 1 was just look up. Big strategy number 2 was share your story. And big strategy number 3 is what I call chains and links. Hey, before we jump into this final strategy, I just wanted to say thank you. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. If you're with your kids or you're watching this on your own, I know your life is busy. You have a lot on your plate. And the fact that you're investing time into some of these strategies really says a lot about who you are as a parent and the connections that you are making with your kids. Our final strategy, chains and links, was based on feedback we've gotten from parents. We created a video called Chains and Links, and that video lives on something called the Human Connection Hub. Now, the Human Connection Hub is almost like Netflix for social emotional learning or character-based videos for kids, right? It's an online library of all of our best videos with follow-up family engagement lessons as well as classroom lesson plans, and it's all in one spot. If you're interested and you want to check it out for resources for your family, we'll leave some information on the screen right now. But the point is, one of the videos we created in it was really originally created for students. But when we started playing it, adults, including many parents and teachers, reached out and said, we need to see this message more. And so Chains and Links is a message that resonates not only with kids, but with all of us. I will let the story speak for itself, but I will ask you, before you get into the video, the final question you will hear. Are you a chain or are you a link? Either way, we need you. It was the summer of 2017. Roberta Urse and her family decided to take a vacation. They were going to the southern tip of Florida, Panama Beach, to be exact, where for a few days they were going to rest, relax, and enjoy the sun. Now, a few hours into this vacation, Roberta's 2 boys, 8.5 and 11 years old, decide to go out for a quick swim in the ocean, but then they didn't return. And Roberta started to get worried. She started walking up and down the beach trying to spot them amongst the crowd, and she said, that's when I heard them screaming from the ocean, help, help, we're stuck, we're stuck. Her boys were drowning, and like any mother would do, Roberta dives into the ocean to try to save them. The boys' 2 uncles, they see what's going on. They dive out there. A few strangers get involved, and unfortunately, as it happens so often in situations like this, 2 drowning kiddos turned into several drowning people in a matter of seconds. Now, a little ways down the beach was a woman by the name of Jessica Simmons. Jessica and her husband were out for an evening stroll, enjoying an ice cream on a seemingly random night, when down by the water they saw people that were gathering, pointing out to the ocean, and at first she thought it was a shark, but when her and her husband ran down to the water, they realized that people were drowning. And without hesitating, Jessica starts facilitating this human chain, desperately convincing everyone around her to start linking arms, and one by one, person by person, they created 80 different unique links that got all the way out to every single one of those people who were drowning, and everyone was brought back to the shore alive. Amazing. Here's the deal. If you were to look out at any given high school at any given time, you would see hundreds of kids who are drowning. Drowning in their stress, drowning in their anxiety, drowning in the intense amount of pressure they put on themselves to be perfect. Even the kiddos who on paper have it all together are drowning. And unfortunately, the problem's getting worse. So what's the solution? I believe it starts by creating chains.
Chains of human connection so that when, not if, but when students get caught up in the undertow and the messiness that is high school, that we have people that are out there to bring them back to the shore. So what does that take? Number one, it calls for a chain maker, a Jessica Simmons, someone who is not only going to see that there's a problem, but who's going to actively start doing something about it. Maybe you're the chain maker. Maybe you're that teacher who has that charismatic personality that every student connects with. Or maybe you're the student who wants to start that club that advocates for more respect. Or maybe there's somebody who is currently drowning in your life right in front of you, and whether you have it all figured out or not, you know it's time to step up and get involved. I don't know. Maybe that's not you, because here's the deal. It's not for everybody. Not everybody is made to be a chain maker, but maybe you're a link. Maybe you're the bus driver who greets his or her students every morning with a smile and hello. Link. Maybe you're the teacher who stands outside his or her classroom and high fives every kid, even the ones that never get noticed. Link. Maybe you're the student who sees the kids that aren't being noticed and says to them, hey, sit with us at lunch today. Link. Think about it. It took 80 different links, 80 different people to get out there to save those drowning humans. The truth is, there are tens of thousands of kids who are currently drowning in this moment, and there's nobody stepping up for them. And the consequence to this is that these kids, they start to lose hope. They become overwhelmed with loneliness, and they feel that the only way to release the pain is to hurt themselves, or in so many cases, hurt others. Here's what I'm saying. Every kid needs a chain made up of multiple links from multiple people, from multiple facets of their lives, from family members to teachers to administrators to youth pastors to, as Roberta Ursay would say herself firsthand, sometimes complete strangers. So just remember, whether it's as big as saving somebody from drowning or as little as giving a few extra compliments, those moments of human connection matter. Those acts of kindness make a difference. Those selfless moments of compassion, they serve as a link. If we get enough links, we can create a ton of chains. And if we can create a ton of chains, I'm telling you, we can save a ton of students. Are you a chain or are you a link? Either way, we need you.
Thanks for watching. I would love it if you would right now take some time, once again, to reflect if you're watching this individually or if you're with some people, your family, have a discussion. I want you to think about how can you be a chain or a link for somebody in your life. In fact, I want you to get as specific as you possibly can, maybe even write down on a piece of paper a commitment of how you are going to be a chain or a link, so it doesn't just become an idea that lives in your mind, it's something that you actually put out into this world. I'll give you a few minutes to do that, and I'll check back in with you after. Hey, thanks for doing that. Listen, we are living in a day and an age where we've never been more divided. And I just wonder, what if we put a little less focus on all the things that tear us apart and a lot more focus on all the things that can link us together? Like I said, it's going to take all of us. Connection is a full-time job, and we are going to need a full-time staff, you, in order to make it work. So to recap, today we had a conversation around reclaiming human connection. Strategy number 1 was all about looking up and being intentional with how we are using our devices. Number 2 was about being real and vulnerable, sharing your story. And big idea number 3 was about making a commitment on how you can make an impact in somebody else's life, how you can link up with the community around you and create the strongest foundation for all the students in your community. Listen, if you are interested in staying connected to our message and our work, the resources that we have for parents and for youth, please feel free to reach out to us. We will leave all of the information somewhere in the body of this video or in some follow-up messages and resources. But we just wanted to say once again, thank you. I also think about the woman that I met on the train that night. Now, I'm not naive to think that one action or that one connection completely changed her life, but I'm also not pessimistic enough to think it didn't matter. You know how I think about it? I think maybe those tears that she was crying like on my chest, maybe they weren't tears of sadness. Maybe they were different. Maybe that woman gets on that train every single night and goes home to a situation that is more incredibly difficult than we can ever imagine. And maybe for the first time in a long time, somebody took the time to notice her, to see her, and maybe for a second, slightly understand her. And maybe those tears weren't tears of sadness. Maybe those tears were tears of joy, tears of connection, tears of feeling seen, and maybe even slightly understood. That's the power when we're a chain or a link for somebody else. That's the power of human connection. And every day we have hundreds, if not thousands, of opportunities to make connections with those around us. But I believe it starts by creating a good plan with our screens, by being real and vulnerable, sharing our stories, and of course, to be committed to being a chain or a link for the people in our communities. Thanks again so much for watching. If you have any questions, concerns, you want to reach out or connect, we'll leave all of our information out there for you. But you're amazing. Air high five. Let's do an I love your face to end this. Get your hand up. Yes. On the count of 3, push it to the screen. Nice and loud. Say, I love your face. 1, 2, 3. I love your face. See you later.